Argentinian Patagonia is home to Los Glaciers National Park and the distinctive Mount Fitzroy. And there is one trail in particular that offers some of the best views and photographies of this iconic range. That trail is Laguna De Los Tres. Right here is El Chaltén, and then up here we have Laguna De Los Tres. It's about an 11-kilometre trail from the town up to the lake, and it is a great little spot for sunrise. However, I think there are some better locations on the way up here that might be better for sunrise, and it will save us a good bit of hiking time first thing in the morning. Round this little area, about midway through the trail, we have Laguna Capri, which offers some reflections of Fitzroy Mountain. We also have what now is probably the not-so-secret waterfall, kind of just around this area, following along this river. There's also another small lagoon somewhere around here, and also offers some great reflections. And because it's a bit shallower, it's probably a safer bet if there's some wind. So I think the plan is to spend some time in and around this area for sunrise, where I think the photography will be better. But then we will head on up all the way to Laguna de los Tres later on in the day to go and check that out as well. It's going to save a bit of time going here, but it's still going to be an early start tomorrow. As the town of El Chaltén slept in the valley below, we began our hike up into the mountains. Taking a right at the first fork and navigating using a mapping app, we headed towards our first stop of Cascada, Escondida. As we approached, Mount Fitzroy began to dominate the skyline. We've arrived here at the not-so-secret waterfall, I suppose. We had a little stop off on the way up actually at kind of like a hidden lagoon which had a really nice reflection on it. But we thought we'd come here for sunrise, and as you can see behind me, it's maybe not so secret anymore, this little waterfall. But it's a great little spot, and to be honest with you, the sky is probably almost too clear this morning. There's not really a cloud in the sky at all, which compared to yesterday is quite surprising. It was super windy and super rainy yesterday. But I'm trying my best to kind of get a composition whilst avoiding everybody else, which is proving to be quite difficult, to be honest with you. And I don't know what you guys think about this, but this is maybe a bit of a pet peeve of mine, and maybe I'm just a little bit salty because we weren't the first here. But so you see these people here, they are stood as close as possible to the foreground interest that everyone would want. They're stood as close to the edge as they possibly can be, which means they're kind of in everybody else's shot. Now, I think this is definitely something a lot of photographers have a bit of a habit of, say at like a lot of viewpoints or lakes or something, you know, you might want to actually get in foreground and work the scene a little bit further back to get more kind of points of interest. But people have the habit of standing very, very, very close to the subject, and then it kind of means that you can't do that. I don't know if you've ever found that, and I don't know, I might be being a bit salty and a bit pedantic there, but let me know what you think. But what I'd recommend with this place, and what I think is maybe a bit silly while they're stood there, is because if you stand really, really close to the waterfall, you have to shoot really wide to get the waterfall in and the mountains. But if you come further back, you can shoot with a longer lens and get a bit of compression, and then you get the Fitzroy range in the background here actually looking much larger in the frame, which to me makes a better shot. So not only by standing closer are you kind of getting in the way of everyone else's images, I think personally you're actually not getting as good an image either. So yeah, maybe something to consider. If you're here, bring a slightly longer focal length. I think even like 40 or 50 mil would probably be what I end up shooting this at to get the mountains looking a little bit larger. Even though, to be honest, it is a pretty generic composition for this area, I will try and show you what I've tried to do. It's a little bit of a struggle just because of the amount of people that are here, but in an ideal world it would be great to centre the waterfall a little bit, but I don't think I can quite do that. But I'll show you what I've got. So you can just about see here that I'm using the waterfall here and having it run right out into the bottom right hand corner here, and then obviously Mount Fitzroy in the background. And I'm shooting now currently at about 50mm, so a little bit more compression, a bit more zoomed in. As you can see, there's a couple people in frame just at the top here, but I'll do my best to Photoshop those out. So nothing super special, but still a nice shot to have in the bag and a nice shot to have this morning. But after this, we are going to complete the whole hike today, but I'm actually going to do a little bit of a loop around by Laguna Capri and maybe back to the lagoon with all the reeds in it that we scouted out first thing this morning, and hopefully get a couple of shots there whilst the sun's a little bit lower and still a bit softer. And then we'll go up to Laguna De Los Tres later on, and then maybe even get some images there, but I've heard the photography is better here, so that's why we're deciding to do this first, but still complete the hike and go on up. Now we're going to kind of hustle back to that lagoon from this morning, and hopefully there's still some golden light on Fitzroy behind me there, you can see. Hopefully we can get there in time just to get a bit of a reflection and some golden light, and yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Backtracked on ourselves a little bit from the waterfall back to this lagoon. It's about 1 kilometre or 1.5 kilometres away, maybe like a 15-minute walk, and there's absolutely nobody here. And you can see behind me just there, we've got this perfect reflection in this little still area of water. Again, there's not a lick of wind here this morning, and yesterday it was blowing a gale and raining, and the forecast did not say no wind, so we're pretty lucky to get these reflections. So we've come on down here to get a quick shot. There is lots of nice foliage and kind of dead trees all along the foreground here as well, along the edge of the shore. So we'll work the scene a little bit and hopefully we can get something interesting. To be honest with you, I'm not actually a massive fan of just kind of a straight up reflection shot. So I feel like I often want something else in the foreground of the image. So for the first shot here, what I'm trying to do is actually use some of these kind of winding branches right on the shorefront of the lake and using them at the front of the image. And then beyond that, I'll have the reflection in the lagoon and then the mountains in the background again. And like, we don't really have any clouds in the sky this morning, so I'm not trying to include too much of the sky, but I think with that kind of nice foreground, midground and background, it will make for a nice image. As we continued on the rest of the hike, we were treated to ever-improving views of Mount Fitzroy. I even managed to grab a couple of shots of it framed by the distinctive trees. So the first 8Ks of this trail is pretty straightforward, to be honest. You've got about 300 or 400 metres of elevation gain in the first 8 kilometres, and then the last 2 you've got maybe 500 or 600 metres. So it does get a lot steeper, a lot more suddenly. You can kind of see here, that's where the trail's going, up to the top of the ridgeline, just kind of up there. But yeah, fairly steep, but I suppose the advantage of living in the Canadian Rockies is that we are kind of used to a lot of elevation gain on trails. But if you're not, keep in mind it's pretty steep. I mean, what a view for lunch, eh? One weird thing about El Chatan, I think I should point out, is that there's no food there. Like, if you want to go to a supermarket and buy something to cook, there's just no options, and the options that are there are really expensive. So we've actually been resorting to going to a lot of these bakeries. So for some reason I can go into a bakery and get some homemade focaccia full of sun-dried tomatoes and olives for less money than I can buy some dried ramen from the grocery store. So I think for our time here in El Chatan, that's what we're going to be doing, is eating pastries and bread. So obviously we've made it to Laguna De Los Tres, and as you can see the light's pretty harsh. It's about midday now, kind of 1 o'clock, and the sun's pretty high in the sky, but it is still kind of behind us, so it might work for a couple of images. We spent a lot of time down at sunrise and in the morning down at those waterfall and that lagoon down the bottom there, and I think that was definitely worth it. But we can't really not take a picture, can we, whilst it looks this good. So I'm going to have a bit of a play around with some of the rocks in the foreground here, and then hopefully I'll end up with something pretty nice. So that's about it. Let me know what you think of some of those pictures. And I think we definitely did that the right way round, and I'd give that advice to anybody heading out here, is maybe just do the sunrise down at the waterfall or at that lagoon. Kind of saves you a bit of time in the morning, means you don't have to do this kind of pretty long hike up to this lake. And although this is fantastic, I think the photo opportunities lower down in the valley are probably a little bit better for sunrise. However, that's about it for us and for our hike here to Laguna De Los Tres. We've got a 10-kilometer hike back down into town now, into El Chartan, where we'll probably reward ourselves with a bit of nice food and maybe a beer. But once again, I appreciate you watching, and hopefully I will see you on the next one.